Welcome to the Esports Central podcast. This is episode 40, and that's crazy because it's the first episode that we're actually doing video on. And, well, you can see all our lovely faces. I'm Extremes. You can see me right over there on the screen. We got Prophecy, Carmel Chickday, and Gutter Lily. How are you guys all doing?
Good, thank you. It only took us 40 episodes to get the video going. You know, not too bad of a track record.
Yeah, I mean, we blame that on Extremes. He had to do so many tests, so we could only get it done on the 40th episode.
Whoa, burn from
Week
Prof
one
there.
of Fiber.
Yeah.
Finally joined the first world, almost.
Well, we're not quite there yet with the first world. Of course, the one thing with Discord is we don't have local video servers. We've got local audio servers, but we don't have local video. So we're nice and laggy, you know. Hey, what can you do, right?
That's why our audio and video is like just a little out of sync.
Yeah, it is. I was trying to find out from Discord a while ago if they would be so kind as to do local video service so that I could, podcast to my 500 YouTube followers, but nope, apparently not. So we'll make do with what we got, and of course the audio version is still around. You can listen to us on Spotify, on Podbean, on Apple Music, all the usual places. So, and most likely you're probably listening there. You're probably not even on the video one on YouTube, but if you are, thanks for joining us. This is what we look like. We're probably much more beautiful than you imagined. So, there we go. But of course, on the Esports Central podcast, if you've never listened to it, and of course you've definitely not watched it because this is the first video one ever, but if you've never been involved with it, had any inkling of it, it's about what's going on in the world of esports. It's our opinions as people who've been involved with esports for a long time, as players, analysts, journalists, all that sort of thing. Those are the sorts of things that we've done, and we're going to give our opinions on some of the things that are going on internationally and also in our country of birth, South Africa. So have a listen, have a look out for it, and join us every single week. This episode 40, is for the 2nd of May 2019, and we'll get going pretty soon. Who wants to go first?
Right, before we get into all the esports garbage, I just want to say that I've been so hyped for season 8 of Game of Thrones, and I've been so hyped for episode 3 in particular, and it was apparently the most epic battle ever. Only none of us could fucking
it wasn't the most
see it.
They didn't say it was the most epic battle ever. They said it was the equivalent of Helm's Deep from the Lord of the Rings series, which is like
days,
top 3 all time. 730 acts. I didn't see many of them. Let's put it that way. Because when you did see them, they were so far in the distance. It was just like, okay, we're having a fight with ants right now.
For all we know, it could have been better than Helm's Deep. We just couldn't fucking see it. So, I don't know.
Complaining ladies, I enjoyed it. I loved it. It set the scene.
Terrible.
It was dark. It was scary.
What scene?
What
What scene did it set?
If you squint.
It set no scene because it was just like, it's black. And then there's dragons flying around. You don't know where the dragons are flying around. And then it's like, okay, so why do we have dragons in this film? Like, why do we take the dragons out of the first half of the fight?
Please come watch the next show.
Wait, didn't you hear? They spent all their CGI on Wolf, on the Wolf Ghost running for like those 23 seconds.
We had 10 seconds of Wolf this week.
10 whole seconds.
I think compared to the normal, 5? There's he in the background.
If anybody hasn't seen the latest episode of Game of Thrones and have watched this podcast,
Thursday.
I profusely apologize.
It's Thursday.
Yeah, okay, actually that's fair.
I'm not allowed to complain anymore.
That is fair.
Well, I made sure that I watched it before we came to do the recording. I went home from work. I've immediately watched it, and I'm actually not as disappointed as they are, probably because I have a better screen than them, so I could actually see what was going on. And even has a brightness and a contrast control. Imagine that. So I could see all sorts of things. It was amazing.
A fun fact about that episode, there was a couple of people who were wearing their Fitbits while watching it, and they were so tense. After the 80 minutes, they recorded over 100 heartbeats per minute, and they made their Fitbit points or whatever because they were quote unquote exercising because they were so stressed the whole episode.
They got Discovery Diamond status from sitting
I
on
was sitting on the freaking edge of my seat so the whole time. And like when you're stressed and you start stress talking, like I was giving a play-by-play, just annoying.
Okay. There we go, future caster in training there from doing that. So that's got nothing to do with esports, but it just was something we were talking about before we went live, so it was important. It had to get out, right?
Okay, fair.
It was such it was just terrible.
I'm actually in the middle of
I
this.
don't really have proper words to explain how bad that was.
I'm actually somewhere in the middle of it. I think it had some really disappointing elements to it and some bits that were pretty good as well. But like overall, it was. I think the problem is because of the expectation they built over all the seasons. It's just there's too much expectation attached to this one thing happening that whatever they did, it was going to be disappointing. Of course, the way they went was probably more disappointing than it could have been. But you know,
when it happened, it looked so cool.
In the dark.
That actually, I didn't even care. I was just like, "This is amazing. This is the best thing ever."
There's better fights in that series than that.
Yeah, it's not even top 3 fights in Game of Thrones.
Just that one, that killing blow.
but you
That
know,
was it. I was like,
I've actually just come.
really cool.
I've come up with a new theory as to why all of those like soldiers in the beginning were outside of the fortress that's fortified that you should stand behind the walls of. They were outside because they couldn't afford all those extras for the whole shoot. So get rid of them quickly and
time
then.
to die.
That's what they said about the Dothraki. That's why they died so fast. They're like, okay, look at all these good-looking buff dudes. Let's
horses?
just send them into the fucking thing quickly. All dead, done.
Even that, I was just like,
So, international esports, will you tell us about something international that's esports that isn't Game of Thrones, Camille?
Okay, I'll try. So, it's Game of Awards here, Game of Award shows. So ESL, actually, was it Mumbai? I think it was Mumbai. One of the ESLs that happened recently, 2 or 3 weeks ago, had the same or maybe a new form of voting method, right? They had Twitch votes, or you vote in the Twitch chat. Now, obviously, famous streamer and player Febby from MVP Phoenix back in the day, now playing for Moneski, a team that kicked him, which got him back for the tournament. It was a pretty funny story. But besides that, he was playing for the tournament. At some point, they were interviewing him, and he's like, guys, vote for me, MVP. I want a Mercedes or whatever. And he's a very funny guy. It was hilarious. Got upvoted on Reddit. And every match he played, people voted for him because he's popular and it was a meme, and you know how Dota 2 Twitch chat is, right? So now we get to a case where this guy makes the finals, plays against a Chinese team that 3-0s them, Keen Gaming, and had like some insane players and insane plays. But at the end of the tournament, he's standing on stage and he actually wins the MVP vote. And he's standing.
He wins the MVP by getting absolutely stomped in the final.
Exactly. Now Eri Neiman is interviewing him, and he's interviewing him, and maybe he's like, "I feel so shit now. I feel ashamed. These guys are way better." And you can see the guy literally cringing on stage. But I mean, it's a hilarious story and a massive tragedy because this guy won an E-Class Mercedes. Happy for him, but not fair to the Keen Gaming guys.
Yeah.
Because of the meme.
I mean, also, apparently, like, the Chinese voters weren't allowed to vote.
Exactly. I was going to get to this point. Now, also, for China, where's the integrity for the MVP votes? Because Chinese viewers don't watch through Twitch. So if a Chinese team is stomping like they did in the last game, you're not going to get the fans voting. And even just fans voting for MVP, I don't know if that's a good system in its whole. I don't know, Prophecy, do you want to add to this?
Can I just ask, if for you
Go
to
for it.
vote, do you have to have a specific account that you pay for, or is this just any type of account
Twitch
you can vote?
chat, follow ESL, #Febby is all it took for him to
So
get a
I can make,
Mercedes.
Gasolili 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 and vote for him?
Yeah.
Oh, nice system. I'm going to play.
And you just doubled the Dota view account at the moment because we're a dead game. Heh. I'm kidding.
Thanks.
So you were going to say something there, Prof?
I wasn't going to say anything. I was just nodding in agreement.
Oh, geez, I thought you were holding on to some big, like, sweeping points about integrity and all of that sort of thing.
Coming in there.
No, I mean, I think it pretty much speaks for itself with how stupid that is to, like, cut out 70% of all Dota viewers worldwide just because they live in the wrong country, and then to basically base an MVP, which is who's the best player, on a popularity contest.
Yeah, that would make sense for like most popular or most flashy or anything like that. But yeah,
it eats at my soul that is an actual decision somebody took.
Well, Prof, can you imagine in CSGO if it had been down to a popularity contest as to who wins the MVP's device wouldn't have won one. And, he's the most MVP awarded player in history.
I mean, think of the one random time that Shroud would have made like a final, he would have automatically won it, despite being clearly the worst player on his own team, and his team almost always getting absolutely wrecked in that final. If they
So
were to
I can
make it.
think of a tournament where that would have happened. It would have been in 2015. It would have been the Gfinity in London where Cloud9 made the semi-final. He would have won the MVP for the tournament for making the semi-final because he's Shroud, right?
Well, that was that Gfinity?
Was it?
I forget now exactly which one was that exactly. Is that the
It
one
might have
where they
been
lost,
Face It
like,
Stage
where they got
2.
absolutely dumpstered in the final by TSM?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look historically as well as the other ESL events where I believe it was all the talent and stuff voting and deciding together who wins it.
The talent have, like, like, in theory they should have nothing stopping them from stopping them from being reasonable about it. Like, it's not like, yeah, sure, they might like one player more, but they still a much more reasonable outlook on who should win that kind of.
Wouldn't it be best to get that from like the players?
Yeah, even other players voting
I mean,
would be
that
good.
would make like a
It would be better, yeah.
lot
It would
more
be
sense
better.
in viewers' choice,
But like,
basically.
It's
even
the
a
People's
combination,
Choice
like you could
Awards.
have it 40% talent, 40% players, or like 20% viewers, or you can still have the viewers part of the voting process, but you can't give it 100%. It has to be like maybe even 40% of the voting can come from the viewers, and then like 60% talent could work as well.
Yeah, I
But
think-
like if you look at the past winners, there's like 3 VP guys. VP won all those 3 tournaments. Like Yapso from Team Secret won the tournament. Like clearly the best players or the guys in contention for the best players won. Where Fabi, although he had a good tournament, but you can't take away from the Keen Gaming guys who absolutely stomped that entire event.
Yeah.
I think with MVPs, you an MVP can win who maybe didn't win the tournament, but it would have to be such an incendiary individual performance that goes like beyond all reckoning that you'd have to give it to him, even though his team lost. But generally speaking, I'd say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's going to have to be a player in the team that actually won the tournament. Like.
Yeah.
The only reason this is something I'm even thought about is because in CSGO, it was one of those things that came out quite a bit with Simple in the past of Navi. His team was terrible. He was ultra carrying to a level that's never been seen before, and amazingly still doing it 18 months later. But he's one of those players who's actually won MVPs without winning the tournament. But there's even other times I'd say that he probably should have won more.
Yeah, to give indication, in the entire history of CSGO, it's happened 3 times. 2 of them are Simple. The other one was a Team Liquid team that somehow like collapsed in the most ridiculous way in the final. So the guy that was super hot, like super carrying his team at that point, like I think dropped some unbelievable. What was it? It was like 40 kills in a single game or something.
Was it
It was
Lee?
best of 3. Yeah, no. It was Twists.
Oh, okay.
The anime child with the greatest hair you will ever see in a.
Yeah, he's got great anime hair. Definitely go check him out. Just for the anime hair. We're talking about.
example
Yeah.
That guy, like it's that guy and twice Simple are the only times that a losing player has won MVP. That should give you an indication of how difficult it should be if you're on the losing team.
Yeah.
In
I mean,
Overwatch, just whoever blew somebody else off a map will get that. If you get a multi-kill or like a quadruple. No. That hero dog hooked someone off the map.
Team watch.
MVP, okay, yeah. That's like the equivalent. We played TF2. It's like the equivalent of running up to somebody with the flamethrower and the pyro and using the secondary fire to blow them off the map, right? It's like
Pretty much.
lame.
I think it's a pretty clear-cut thing. Like, to have a better voting process ESL. That's about it.
Please.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is like it steals credit from much better players.
Especially with such a big prize. That's not just
Yeah, it's
and
like
pat on the
even
back or
A whole
$1,000.
E-class. I mean, geez, that's a huge prize.
It's
Yeah.
part of like a meme, basically.
But even Fabi, like the guy who won, then felt bad. Like you could literally see the guy, like, holy shit, what have I done? I'm right in front of the guys who stopped the whole tournament, and I'm accepting the card. Nah,
Listen,
man.
He probably felt a lot better the second he actually got the keys, and he's like, "I'm going home now."
Yeah, that's fair. He could wipe his tears in his Mercedes E-Class sedan.
Yep.
Use the seatbelt, the soft seatbelt to wipe his tears away. Because there is just something about luxury cars. The seatbelts are like softer than mere mortal cars, right?
Like warm your seat, just open the window.
Yeah.
All good. Oh, my chair's rattling.
So I think if we're talking about drying tears and such things, we should actually go over to Fortnite, because there's a really interesting thing that happened recently. And actually, I can play the video if you guys like. Should I do that?
Ooh, do it.
Ah, yeah. University of Georgia.
Repping well.
Yeah. So this is an interesting happening, shall we say? We'll go. It was Slasher, Rod Breslau, the esports journalist who brought the whole thing up. And well, we'll quickly play it. Yeah, this is tournament winners in a college
So final
tournament.
question: what's next for this duo? Another season, more tournaments, the online circuit? How's it going?
Honestly, we don't really like the game that much anymore.
Oof. They
Not
don't
gonna
like the
lie,
game that
so
much.
We'll see what happens.
Clearly
Epic
not.
is kind of messing around a little bit with
Sounds
the
like
way they're bouncing
every
everything, so.
player
I'm pulling the
of
plug on that one. Give us a better
competitive
answer
esports
here.
title, you tend to end up,
we
wouldn't say
decided we
hating the
wanna play,
game, but you certainly hate
Fortnite
certain
anymore.
things about the game and feel the need to really complain.
So the other thing that gets said there is where the interviewer goes, let's get a better opinion. Yeah, was that what he said?
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, basically just get a better response, and then I think the teammate basically just goes, "Yeah, we're probably not going to play anymore. It's quite bad where the game is right now."
Oh, geez, that is a crazy situation. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that, guy, Lily.
No. Well, obviously, like Prof also just mentioned, is something that you see in almost every esports. But pretty big stage, $6,000 prize, and that's what gets broadcasted. We don't like the game. We don't like the changes that's been made. It's no longer fun to play, and nothing's actually changed. So it and based on from what I understand, what they meant is actually balance changes. I feel like some other games may even have more complaints, but that was what it was about. It's just like what Epic has been doing with the game, nothing's changing, and people at that level is just saying, "I'm out."
Nadia, you can relate to this in the Overwatch point of view, can't you?
Maybe. Listen, I didn't even feel the brunt of goats in that sense, but I think that's exactly. I was seeing myself and every other almost player in that, just with that kind of attitude, and people actually saying that nothing is going to change, and people actually saying that, well, we'll move on to another game. With how Fortnite is so big, but how long is it going to keep people if that's what's happening at the top? And it is what it is competitively. But it was funny as hell for someone who doesn't play it.
Yeah,
Oh,
you go first, Kamil.
It reaffirmed what me and Glenn say every week on this podcast. Even though we're taking the piss and we're memeing, it's still hilarious when it actually gets said by actual pro players. Well, it's a college tournament, so not the biggest deal, but still super funny.
Yeah, I think it's also just based on what the players were saying. There was like an interview on Discord from, I think it was Motherboard. They're the guys who did it. In fact, I can probably bring it up quickly. It's where the guys were saying that they actually wanted to use the platform to highlight the whole thing. Yeah, their sort of feelings on the game, and I think it's quite an indictment on the competitive scene for that title. If like the players feel the only way that they could actually get some kind of action is to literally stand on a stage after you've won a tournament, interviewer's mic in your like literally in your face, and you go, "No, I don't really like the game, and I'm probably not going to keep playing it because they keep changing things and they're making it bad." So it's how bad a situation do you have to be in?
What I actually remembered was that I messaged you guys about it, and where Epic had said that changes were brought in because Fortnite is, and I quote, "too intense to be enjoyable."
Oh yeah, that one, eh? Jeez. Too
What?
intense to be enjoyable. We got to change things, make it easier for the plebs, eh?
Listen, if it's not cancer and you want to kill yourself after playing it, it's not an esport.
Well said.
That is brilliant. So I was about to say, which people never complain that no. Which pro players never complain that the game is bad, and it's Dota. They complain about the
What?
patch, but
I thought you were
They
going to say like
complain
chess.
constantly. They complain
Actually,
about
no.
everything.
I'm lying. They complain about the patch all the
Yeah,
time.
fuck you, Camille. You're just talking shit, man.
But the game is well balanced, though. I will say that. Fuck Dota players moaning. And I moan about the patch as well, but the game is balanced.
Well, it's got that going for it, I guess. But yeah, overall, I think the Fortnite thing is interesting. And then I think with Overwatch League, there was also a couple guys with the first home game that came out this past week. Because of course they've been trying to change things to having home and away games, and they got home stadiums and everything. This is a first time this concept, which is like a traditional sports concept, is actually being tried in Overwatch League now in the second season. How did it go? What happened?
It looked fantastic. Like, I was moving this weekend, so I didn't really get to watch anything live. But getting like the back app, somebody's stripping.
Oh yeah,
What was that?
go play the music.
It's too hot.
Didn't even have to pay him. What a cheap date.
So yeah, no, it looked really good.
So does Camille.
Dallas Fuel actually got their Dallas Fuel actually got a win against Houston Outlaws, which I think was pretty cool for the whole, win in Texas vibe that they had going on. But I kind of loved some of the things coming out after the game, where I saw it on Reddit, and then I saw some Richard Lewis tweets about it as well, where people like, it's just such bad form because people were booing at competing players at this tournament. I'm like, bruh.
You'd think they'd have better things to do with their time than complain about people booing. It's like, have you ever watched a sports game of any variety?
The thing is, maybe they haven't.
Yeah, I guess so, but like the whole point is, let's make esports like real sports. We'll have home and away games in stadiums. Oh, we don't like the booing. Like, what do home fans do to the other team in every sport?
That's what you do. But it would also made it so much more exciting, and I think more invested for a lot of people. From what I read, at least, it was pretty much sold out. It was big. The vibe was pretty much alive, and people were booing. I mean, if I was there, I would be booing. Like, I don't even care who was playing. I'd boo two teams at the same time. Like, I do that shit. It's fun. I think players playing competitively, that you kind of have to get used to it. They probably can't even hear it. For most of it, unless when they're walking down, Moo, you suck. You probably do. So whatever. No, I think it was fantastic. I think it was I think it was a success. I don't think it's, people saying afterwards, look at this. It looked so great. It was so popular. Overwatch as a game is saved. And it's going to last forever. And
correct me if I'm wrong. There was also like a power outage at a point.
That was within 5 minutes of it starting.
Was it recorded in South Africa?
No, so it's ESCOM branching out to Texas. But yeah, there was a power outage. It went out and it got back on, and everything actually flowed. Like, I don't know. Like I said, my standards seem to be very low. Maybe it's because I am from South Africa and we never have electricity, and sometimes in Cape Town don't even have water. But for me, like, once I sorted that out, everything looked great. And as an event, it was a success, and more's coming. So hopefully they too shall be a success, and then you can boo at the other team.
You too can boo.
Yeah,
on the booing thing, I don't understand. Like, it's like booing happens in all sports, but in American sports, it's so bad. I went to go watch a Golden State Warriors game when I was in the States, and they blowing out. Who were they playing against? Memphis Grizzlies. I think they're blowing them out by like 30 points. The guy gets a free throw, they still booing the people. I'm like,
listen,
I was like blown away. But like, this is how American sports are.
I want London Spitfire to have a home game, and you can have like some UK dude throwing a beer bottle. Sponsored by Bud Light.
That would be interesting. That's all I'm gonna say.
But like what Camille was saying about American sports fans, I went to an amateur dodgeball game that my friend was playing in, and the teams, there was like no crowd except everybody's like girlfriends and wives and kids and stuff, because there's like some middle-aged dudes throwing dodgeball at each other and some younger dudes as well, and it's just like, and they're sledging each other. They're like, you suck, and they're just going like all the cliches you see in American sports movies were happening in a little dodgeball court in rural Pennsylvania, and I was just like, American sports is crazy. Like,
it's wild.
Like if you did that in Europe or where we're from, to the other team, they would beat the crap out of you. But in American sports, it's what they do. So like the fact that people are so triggered by booing in Overwatch League, it's like, I know Blizzard's trying to make their esport like a safe space. You don't know, white supremacist things. You know, no Pepe the Frogs, all of that kind of thing you can't do. Are they going to now, like, you know, if
Disney
enough people
friendly.
complain, you know, like, do the crowd have to like keep quiet? You know, it's like when it's golf or tennis, you know, quiet on the court. Kind of like, is that what's going to
Hear a
happen in this
mechanical
esport?
keyboard clicking in the background.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that the fans are triggered by that. What should have been an amazing event that should be celebrated, they were bitching about. It's like, come on,
Oh,
guys.
listen, I think it's always just, it's not to say that it's the majority of people, so it's likely that it's just the loud people, you know, people who are making themselves heard that's actually complaining about it. Personally, I wouldn't care. Like, if you don't cheer for, you know, Dallas Fuel and you boo for them, then that's fine. I will be heckling you from my side, and you can just like scream at them, and then a fight can break out. I'm cool with that. Obviously.
The one
Actually,
thing
it makes-
I just thought about, though, with like esports insults, the kinds of insults that gets routinely said to other people in games. Can you imagine if those were like slogans on placards? You know, like
Oof.
"get cancer and die" kind of thing. It's like on a billboard. It would be terrible.
Given
Like
the
there is a
last
line.
That's not what
racial
your mom
epithets
said
used.
last night.
Oh, geez,
that would be terrible.
yeah, like
I don't know. It's just like, I don't know why people get so sensitive to this kind of thing. It's like, it's just like, have you just not grown up anywhere where booing exists? Like, is that literally like how mollycoddled you've been throughout your entire life, that booing is upsetting you?
But presumably you've played Overwatch and somebody told you they're going to have carnal relations with your mother at some point, right? Like,
Yeah, that's okay. But
I
booing,
wish.
that's way across the line.
it's crazy. It just doesn't compute. Well, anyway, away from computing, let's go to something that very much does compute with that. Well, I think CSGO fans all over, but specifically, I think in this case, because we're from South Africa, we want to just take a little bit of a bent on this. But this is the announcement from StarLadder about the major qualifiers for the next CSGO major happening in Berlin. And this is a cool one because for the first time, we're going to actually have the involvement of the Dark Continent. So I think that's a momentous thing. It's never happened before. There's been one team, I think it was Bravado in 2014, who were invited when there were still invites to the major. But now we're talking, there's an actual qualifier. So tacked onto the Asia Minor, which is the main tournament at the end. You can see all of the different sections here, Oceania, East Asia. Those are the places that are normally involved, Middle East as well. But now we've got North Africa involved with the Middle East qualifiers, Central and South Africa, which is super important to us. That's two of them, May 14th to 15th and May 17th to 18th. And then there's also the Southeast Asia guys. So one team from all of those regions, as far as I know, make it through to the minor. Except I think in the case of Oceania, it's 2, and East Asia and Southeast Asia, it's a bit more because I think it's 12 teams
How
total or
big is
something.
the like competitive CS in like Central and I'm assuming
Not very.
North?
North Africa does have something. We know from doing ESL Africa, a couple of seasons of it, that there are quite a lot of North African teams, the Algerian guys, the Tunisian guys. They have quite an active scene because those players play on European servers because they're close enough. But Central
So
Africa,
who's
I
our
don't really know.
Who's our competition, basically? I say we, as if I have a team that I support.
Well, the good news is it's just South Africa and Central Africa together. So Central Africa, I guess, would that be maybe, and I've seen Ugandan servers, so maybe them, Kenya, those sorts of guys.
Have our teams ever played against them?
There are Kenyans. Like,
Hmm.
I know that there's active Kenyan teams on Twitter. There's a couple of teams doing the rounds. You just sort of got to find them. It's pretty tricky to like find all of the
The
players.
recesses of the internet, we have to find like local teams.
Yeah,
It's
well,
hard enough to find South African ones.
that's true. But the good thing, I guess, from a South African point of view is there's the opportunity for our teams to qualify potentially for the major. They've got to go through the open qualifiers, 2 of them, then the closed qualifier, then actually go to the Asia Minor in Asia, where you're going to end up playing teams like Renegades, who are one of the best teams in the world at the moment, probably Tyloo, Vichy Gaming, these sorts of people who, under normal circumstances, will absolutely wreck anything we have. So
But even if you get railed, I mean, it's an amazing experience.
Yeah, it should be, but I think it's very
Yes, that's-
important that whoever makes it actually does do well. I mean, I'm again assuming that the Central African teams aren't going to wreck us. We don't know. Maybe they will, but
Yeah, but even if they do, like, it's still African representation.
yeah,
The
absolutely.
best teams need to go.
It's like the Soccer World Cup when we fell out in the first step, and then you're just like, okay, next African team, you're it.
Don't even bring up Ghana in 2010, man. Heartbroken.
It is a bit weird, though. I will say that like the North African teams don't qualify with the Southern African teams. Like
Africa's
the Northern African teams get like they go to
Middle
Is
East.
it the Europe qualifier? Yeah, they go with the Middle East to the like the European qualifier, which is like a lot harsher on them, I think. Than it
No,
is
no,
on
they're
us.
still in the Asia Minor.
Are they?
Yeah. Middle East and North Africa together. So that's I mean, there's a couple of good Middle Eastern teams. I don't know if they're better than like the guys that we know from North Africa. I think probably the North African guys are probably better, but it's a little hard to say. But we'll see there. Again, I mean, it's been 2 years since ESL Africa now almost, so a lot of those teams have moved on because there hasn't been anything else for them. A lot of those players play in Europe now. For South Africa, the point I was going to make a little bit earlier that's really important for us, I think, is that one of our teams, whoever goes, does really well, even if they don't make it through. And I think the odds of them making it through are pretty low. But at the same time, just give a good account of themselves, show themselves to be worth being there, to be worth being included. Because after 5 years of CSGO majors, we've never been included in terms of qualifiers. This opportunity's never been there. And I'd say for all the other regions that have never been involved from Africa as well, the Central Africans, the North Africans, they need to also do well and just give a good account of themselves at the minor so that Valve looks at it and goes, well, it's actually worth including this part of the world. Because like in every esport, us South Africans are always, we never get included. I mean, even in the games where we play on 200 ping and we're happy to, you know, like things like Fortnite and PUBG and whatever, you know, guys would benefit from low ping, but of course they're competing on high ping, and even then they're not being included in a lot of these World Cup kind of events. And we see this kind of thing consistently. So in CSGO, an esport where you need low ping, we're actually being included and will potentially go to a LAN. And this can prove to Valve that, hey, Africa is actually worth investing in, is worth including. Because honestly, for myself, I did not think this was going to happen, not in the next few years. I thought it was like, it's probably like a future thing. And I'm actually super surprised that it's happened. What do you think, Prof?
I definitely think it's long overdue. I'm very, very glad that finally somebody did decide to get their backsides into gear and get it in place. I think it's fantastic that we get two teams over, even if it's just a qualifier. So like it's not just the same team going over every 6 months basically, and it's going to give us, especially with the situation in South Africa right now, is that we don't have the usual guys hanging around, so there's no bravado and energy and all the rest. So we're going to see a couple of the new teams coming through.
Do you think we could see potentially ATK actually coming back from America to play in this? Because like the notice is pretty short. I mean, it's
this one no, because like if you saw how Black Poison himself said it, he said he's glad for his friends back home.
Okay, yeah, that
so
pretty
I
much
don't
says
think
it.
ATK is going to have anything to do with this one. The turnaround time is just too short. We've got 3 weeks.
They are looking for an academy team, but I also feel like maybe
that's not going to be a factor. That is the one.
Who's the teams that will possibly even have a chance at the moment?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because you'd think the best team from South Africa, ATK, would be in the qualifier and make it through, but the way Valve tends to do things, they don't give you a lot of time. Their tournament takes precedence, so whatever you do, drop your stuff and do their thing.
Technically, can you say that they are the best team if they haven't played the South African teams yet?
Yes, even without playing.
What could happen?
You'd have to really lawyer this though, because
you'd
they
have
are the
to.
best South African
She's a lawyer
team,
though. Watch out.
Yeah, they are the best South African team, but they're not the best team in South Africa.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing right now. Who is the best team in South Africa? Because that to me is not a clear-cut thing by any means right now.
Yeah. Because it's kind of feels like there's been so much chopping and changing. Even with the ATA team as well. Like I do think obviously there are a bunch of really good players, but right now you probably need this VS, to come to an end to actually see who's coming out top in any event.
And it's not going to finish before. Well, I mean, the online leg's finished, but there isn't going to be the LAN event before this happens. So their LAN, I think, is at the end of May. So it could be. I mean, Sinister 5 is in there, Goliath Gaming is in there, Big 5, Energy. Yeah, there's a few teams because I think in previous years.
The other thing to remember is Dimitri Detrin is still hanging around, and he could certainly join a team, very quickly and become a real problem for some.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. The ex-Bravado guy, who's probably still a Bravado guy. Let's be honest, his brother owns the team, so he could even, if he wanted to, him and his brother could create a team and just have a Bravado team that somehow slips in there as well, which would be, I guess, pretty upsetting to the existing teams, but it's possible.
Did they still have their academy team?
No.
Actually,
Bravado, is it an academy team? I thought it's the girls.
It's just
team
the female team, yeah.
They called them academy.
Yeah. Well, academy.
So I was like, that's an academy team?
No, well, I mean, they're a female team. They have obviously been playing in some of the all-female leagues, and they play in VS Gaming, but they're just not of the level, I don't think, to really be a factor in something like this. I definitely think it's between those 4 names I mentioned as to who it might be. I'm willing to bet that Goliath Gaming will come second, just because their whole thing is always to come second. So I'll bet that they come second in this. Which I know it sounds like a horrible thing to say, but
set date reminder, please.
Set date reminder. Okay, well, are we betting something on this?
Oh, good gosh, I never even got that other thing.
Yeah, Sean, you pay up, you bastard.
No, I lost.
Oh, you lost.
He
Okay,
lost.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Prof. Okay. Well, I
that
will.
prize we spoke about, I will try and make that if they do not finish second
Well,
in the WhatsApp group.
Okay. We'll do that. I'll bet a hat on it. Who wants a hat? Nobody wants a hat.
Is
Okay.
it a hat sign? Is it a hat signed by Red Eye though?
I actually have 2 Goliath Gaming hats, so I'll take the bet and bet Goliath will. So you say they finish second, I say they'll take it.
You still they'll take it. Okay.
Well, actually, no. I think I don't know anything about CSGO, but fuck it. I'll put money. They'll take it.
Okay. Cool.
I'll
Goliath
say
Gaming hats up for grabs.
They'll finish third.
Ooh.
'Cause I don't know.
Okay.
That's my number.
Well, for the international viewers, they've all gone to sleep now. They don't know what the hell we're talking about. So, well,
This is also based on the fact: are they actually going to play in it?
yeah, they should. I assume that they will.
feel like it.
I think that's a pretty safe bet. But anyway, overall, the Star Ladder major qualifiers, those have been announced. Have a look out for them going on from mid-May, and then the minor to come. And of course, that's going to be a good one because it's the first Star Ladder major, which I think is long overdue. They're one of the OG tournament providers who've never had a major. And it's also going on in Berlin, which is quite an interesting one. Very nice city, been there before. Very, very cool place. I'd definitely be keen to go. So, maybe I should try and figure out a work trip at the same time. I don't know. But either way, it's going to be epic. And we're finally included in all of Africa. I think it's awesome for us. So let's definitely get behind the local teams, whichever region in Africa you're from, and show them your support. League of Legends. Are we talking about League of Legends this week, Sean?
Well, we kind of need the main man, Glenn, here to actually go into the.
Who is that?
Deep.
Honestly,
This guy that he sort of walks
Prodigal
in every
son.
now and then it's like, oh, it's this guy. He sort of appears. He's almost like our former dad Nick Holden,
It's
but
absent.
not quite. Yeah.
I kind of see him as a prodigal son. He comes in, he has a fight with someone, leaves, comes back.
Literally, what
Welcomed with open arms.
it is whatever Camille's opinion is. It's like Glenn is like, fuck you, Camille, and Camille's like, fuck you, Glenn. And that's literally the relationship dynamic. You'd think that there's more behind it off the podcast, but there isn't.
He's actually not been on for so long that I missed that piece of shit. That's how long it's been. So we're gonna wait for him till next week before we bring this with the League of Legends thing.
So, dear viewers and listeners, imagine an amazing transition. Imagine an animation, because here's just 2 of us now. And the reason for that is we forgot to talk about a couple of things when we were recording this yesterday. So, had to edit this in, myself and Carmel. We didn't want to get the entire cast back. But the thing is, we forgot to include some stuff, and I'll blame it entirely on doing a video podcast, worrying about the technical side and forgetting to actually cover all the topics. There's a very important topic we left out, so I think we'll jump into that quickly. And that particular topic pertains to Rick Fox. He's about to leave Echo Fox, the team that bears his name, and that's amid racist abuse from an organization shareholder. And this story was broken by Richard Lewis over on Deserto, and it blew up entirely for all sorts of reasons. Let's go with the story first, which I think, that it'll speak for itself, and then we'll talk about some of the other stuff around it as well. So I'll just bring it up on the browser here for you guys. So there we go. There's some anonymous emails that were sent to Deserto, or Dexerto, however you want to say it, explaining the situation. That's Rick Fox over there. He's a former LA Lakers player. Wouldn't say he's a legend or anything like that, but he's a player who started an esports all called Echo Fox. They've been around in a few different esports. I think right now they're mostly known for fighting games, but this whole thing is basically predicated on some racist abuse that was targeted towards both Rick Fox and Jace Hall, who's the former CEO of Echo Fox. And this is coming from one of the shareholders of the company. So one of the guys that sits on the board. It's not necessarily somebody who's involved in the daily sort of things with the team, but it's still a crazy thing. And then you got the guy who's the team actually bears his name. He goes, "Well, I'm out." So that's a pretty big story, wouldn't you say, Carmel?
Massive story. But before we get into the story, I just want to say we did what Game of Thrones couldn't, and we killed off the main members of our plot because they needed to go, They needed to go.
Well, magically they'll be back again, because I'm going to slot this right in the middle. So, there's not going to be any continuity, which is fine. That'll be like Game of Thrones too.
At this point, nothing surprises me. But
Plot
the story,
continuity gone.
the story is massive. Imagine, it's like the guy who owns the team, he has his name and everything, and he's forced to leave the team because of this kind of crazy thing. And he says here in the article, N-words dropped on him and his colleagues, and that's ridiculous. I think the most similar situation I can remember that are similar to this is maybe you roll back the clock 4 years and look to the NBA and the Los Angeles Clippers team. The owner there, Mr. Donald Sterling, got caught saying some really bad stuff about the African Americans, dropping many racist terms to his mistress at the time. There was a recording of it, and he got banned for life from the NBA. Got a $2.5 million fine, and he was forced to sell the team. Adam Silver made him sell the team, the president of the NBA. But obviously, the NBA is a bit different because I'm sure they have, the NBA is in a position where they have contracts with the teams where they can force people to do that, right? I don't think the League of Legends, the LCS has that kind of contracts or anything like that in place, or the litigious power that the NBA would have. But I still do think that it is quite an unfair situation where the owner of the team, the guy anybody, if you read these articles, people will say Rick Fox is one of the most passionate people about esports. He has his name on the team, right? So it is quite an unfortunate situation when he's forced to leave, and this shareholder can just be like, "Well, I got money, I can do what I want." I mean, the Los Angeles Clipper guy had $3 billion in the bank, and he was forced to leave because they had good rules in place. So I don't know if there's a way in esports where we can be like, you know what, this guy, this shareholder, we're not letting this team compete while he's there, and they need to make a change. I don't know if that's a possibility, though.
Yeah, well, on this, I think the interesting part would actually be where it says towards the bottom of the article, there's been some updates that have come out since it actually broke at the beginning, well, it was towards the beginning of last week, where actually Riot Games have responded to the whole thing. The LCS Commissioner Chris Greeley announcing that they've launched an investigation and will respond accordingly based on available actions within our team agreements and the LCS rules. So they are going to do something about it, clearly. As to what that's going to be, I mean, this is also Riot we're talking about, how they tend to be quite sort of, they drop the hammer on players, they drop the hammer on streamers big time, but they don't tend to do that so much with people who have money to give them. So we'll have to see how that actually pans out. I hope that something will come out of it. But as to what it'll actually be, I don't know. The second part of the story, and I mean, this is an abhorrent thing that the guy who's, the team bears his name, says that because of the racial abuse that he's received, he's deciding to step down from his team. The shares are available, you guys can buy me out, I'm out, kind of thing. It must have been pretty bad for him to take that move, because he also said, he mentioned somewhere there about how it's not his personal brand to sort of endorse that kind of thing or to allow that sort of behavior, so he's stepping away. And it must have been pretty bad if you're going to do that. It's just, yeah, it's a crazy situation. So that's a big story. But what's crazy about the situation is the story got almost bigger in a lot of ways, because that's something that directly affects League of Legends. But because the article was written by Richard Lewis, the journalist who's been at odds with the League of Legends subreddit for quite a while, the mods there specifically, they banned him in 2015 they were saying that he was brigading, getting his followers to upvote things. It was basically bullshit. It was just something to try to get rid of him, basically. Personal dislike. I don't know what the reason actually is, but because of that, the story from Dexerto goes up and gets removed by the mods because they reckon it doesn't hold any interest to the League of Legends community. Meanwhile, Echo Fox is one of the big League of Legends franchises, and this directly affects people. This is a story that was on many subreddits involved with esports, and there was no problem. But on the League of Legends subreddit, it gets taken down, and this sort of unleashed a storm of tweets that we saw from various figures, even people who aren't friends or in any way a supporter of Richard Lewis, because of course he's a polarizing figure to a lot of people. Even those sorts of people were even coming out and saying, this is bullshit, how can you do this? League of Legends subreddit's a joke, that it's actually suppressing information that's in the public interest. Crazy.
It's like I think of Reddit, that Reddit mod sounds like a mall cop, right? Somebody who doesn't really have power, but in this small concentrated place, he has some form of position of power. And that guy, he's like, you know what? You dropped the chip on the floor, The cleaning staff's not coming to pick it up. I'm the mall cop. You're gonna pick up that chip. It's like, but that's even like pretty reasonable. This is just like, I don't know what they're trying to do. Maybe they have some vendetta against Richard Lewis. I don't know the full story, but like, I didn't even know. Like, I don't think the Dota 2 subreddit even has mods. It feels like any sort of shitpost can make it through. But this is like a legit article that gets fucking taken down. That's ridiculous. Honestly, this is a big story. So it's not like some, I don't know, 2K19 meme, or this is a real story. I don't think this kind of stuff should be taken down at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's even nuttier, and I keep sort of making it sound like this has escalated, and it kind of has, because like all Dexerto content is actually banned off the League of Legends subreddit because Richard Lewis works there. I mean, that's next level. It's just crazy. So, I mean, I think first off, coming back to the actual story, racism, never good, never allowed, should never be allowed to prosper. I hope Riot does something about it, because they say they're looking to do something about it potentially. But even that, saying that, I hope within Echo Fox the other shareholders come down on this guy, because I don't know if he's the majority shareholder or who he is. The name has been withheld, but somebody there needs to do something, because Rick Fox is going out, and that's all terrible. But then we escalate it and go, well, the whole League of Legends subreddit and their community of mods reckon that a story of the size about racism in esports is, and specifically as it also pertains to their esport, isn't relevant. And oh wait, let's escalate that more, because it was written by Richard Lewis. And Richard Lewis writes at Dexerto that we should take all of their content off, and this is one of the biggest esports news websites of the world. So it's mind-blowingly stupid from their side, and the story itself is ridiculous. So there's many levels of craziness to this whole thing, Carmel.
For sure. And like, just one last thing to add. I mean, we see in football now this huge drive, like players like Raheem Sterling, I think Sadio Mane from Liverpool, all these guys for fighting against racism. And like, football is a long-standing sport, right? More than 100 years of tradition going in, and it's still fighting these battles. Now in esports, right from the get-go, we still in our baby phases. LoL hasn't been not older than 10 years. We can't let this stuff be allowed. Now, I'm not gonna think Riot is gonna be our saving grace, because Lord knows, in the next podcast, you will see the heat we drop on that shit company. But Like us as a community need to take our stand where it is.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's a clear cut issue. This cannot be happening. Take notes from the NBA and make sure the bad guy actually goes away here and Rick Fox lives. That's my take. And Reddit mod, you have no fucking power. You're a Reddit mod. Don't
It's a whole group
get
of them.
off on this shit. Like,
Yeah.
what? Who cares about Reddit mods, man?
Oh, I thought some of the discussion I saw coming out was also, saying some high-profile figures on Twitter were also saying that, in their opinion, what the Reddit mods are doing over on the League of Legends subreddit is actively suppressing stories that are in the interest of their community because of personal reasons, petty dislikes, that sort of thing. And it's come to the point where like a lot of content creators are sort of fed up with them. And I just wonder, whether or not you might see a second League of Legends subreddit of some kind show up at some point. I mean, maybe that's a crazy suggestion, but it almost seems like it needs to be nuked, and they need to rebuild or something, because it's been something. Things like this have been happening for 5 years already. So it needs
think
to
about
stop.
this. Like, we're looking at this thing and we're like, oh, it's this petty, stupid thing, right? But if you look at it, if this is the official League of Legends subreddit, then what they're actually doing, if you're looking at it from a further viewpoint, is they're suppressing information that, like, unethical information, they get somebody that's happening to. They basically, it's supporting racism if you're silencing an outcry against racism, right?
Yeah. What are you saying by doing that?
What is deserto? Exactly. Like, it's easy to laugh and say, oh, okay, petty, stupid Reddit mods like I am, yeah. But what you're doing is harmful. It's harmful to the scene. It's harmful to the people involved. And even if it is petty or not, like, if you have a problem with Richard Lewis, you can't ban his thing on Reddit because you end up looking like the fool then, right?
100%. So I think what we'll do now is we'll transition over to local esports. Again, just slotting this in the middle there, and then we'll talk about something local esports, and then magically all four of us will reappear, and it'll be like it was yesterday again. It's going to be great. I promise. I'm probably making it sound better than it's going to be. It's literally going to just be a hard cut. So anyway, the next thing, let's just bring this up here. Bravado Gaming attending the Call of Duty World League in London, and that's happening right about now, actually, from the 3rd to the 5th of May. So that's coming up pretty soon. The team's going over there. You can see the guys, I remember Cogs from Energy Esports before Lithium, one of the long-standing Bravado guys. So it's over on the Bravado website, so you can go and give it a read if you're interested. But I think we should be interested. This is pretty cool that a South African team is actually going over in something that isn't Counter-Strike or Dota 2 for a change.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't have our usual COD lad, Mr. Glenn, our console player, to be flying the banner high, so we don't know much about COD to do deep analysis. But this is super PMA news. Like, again, Bravado pulling out to stop sending a team overseas. It's like super good to see. And yeah, like, there's nothing bad to say about it. This is like PMA news in South Africa esports. Like, you don't see that often.
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing, and it's just good that it's not the same thing, because we were obviously we're talking a little bit earlier in the international section about how it's so cool that South African teams will get to take part in potentially the next CSGO major. At least they'll be in the qualifiers and in the Asia minor, which is a huge step. But those are always the guys that we're talking about. We're very seldom talking about Call of Duty and all of the other games. So it's really great to see them have a chance. And I'll quickly bring up the Bravado Twitter account. You can see some pictures here of the guys having landed on that side. There's Shani with them. Cheerleader. I don't know why she's there, but I guess she is the person that you'd look to for Call of Duty news in South Africa with her random, what's her show called? I'm drawing a blank anyway, but she does like a highlight show, that sort of thing.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Actually, Detriny there too. Is he gonna sub in? Is he gonna pick up the
he's
controller?
part of Bravado management, but all shooting games are the same apparently. But jokes aside, like, even the narrative that gets pushed, okay, we talk a lot about Dota and CSGO here on this podcast because we happen to have Dota and CSGO personalities here. That's what we know. But I don't think, especially in the context of South African esports, I don't think there's a big, like, the big esports like Dota or Counter-Strike, and in the small esports, we all small, we all the same. If you look at that COD tweet, it's no different engagement than a CSGO tweet. It's more than a fucking Dota 2 SA tweet. So I think in South Africa we need to kill the prerogative of small esports because we all small esports,
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with you there, man.
But,
so good luck
but in
to
this
them.
case,
Yeah.
In this case, it's big esports. They're going overseas, man. They're the main men in COD Overwatch League. I mean COD World League in London.
COD Overwatch League? What?
What? I only know Overwatch League. I don't know. I made a mistake. Just let it
Well,
go.
Call of Duty World League is a pretty big thing, and I think they're in the open part of the tournament. Again, I don't really understand how it all works. I'll try get Holden to explain it to me, and maybe then I'll kind of get how it all works. But apparently they're in like a pool of 128 teams, which is a hell of a lot. So I don't know what the format is or anything like that, but I just hope to see them put on a good show and make South Africa look good. That's the point. I mean, that's also one of the things. Often when we send teams overseas, and we've seen this happen in CSGO so many times, it's like, well, at least they flew the flag. So you're literally saying it's a good thing that they waved a flag, but they got shit wrecked on the server. It's just like, I understand the moral victory of being there, but take it a step further and win a little bit too. That'd be nice. And I know that's easier said than done. I mean, that probably sounds inflammatory and probably disrespectful to the people who've gone over to even say. That's not my intention. It's just, we can't always just be participants. Just getting a medal for participation sucks. We do need to do well, and we've seen the 80K team, when they were called Bravado, doing well overseas. And I'd hope to see that this team that says Bravado on the tin does well as well, because doing well is actually what opens these opportunities. I think because the Bravado CSGO team did well is why it was in Valve's minds to actually include Africa in the CSGO minors. So I think that made a big difference, because they actually performed well. And in something like Call of Duty World League, if the team does well, more opportunities will come. If the team gets wrecked, then your potential for future things are tenuous. So, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me on that, but I think it is actually important that when we send teams over, that they do deliver some good results.
Look, I do think it's also kind of unfair to expect like good results. Let's say we send a local CSGO team over, right? If you're competing in Europe, there's actual pro teams there. These guys have team houses. These guys get high level competition all the time, where we like a small, isolated, shitty pool. So it is a bit unfair in that case. But even with saying that, like, look at ATK or Bravado when they were overseas. Like, we took the 5 best from here. We gave them that opportunity, and they managed to do something with it. I think a good example also is like a real life example in the same esport with like similar people is that in the FIFA scene, like we had this debate like 2 or 3 weeks ago with the two guys who went over. They got like stomped in this FIFA thing, so we weren't like super PMA talking about them on this podcast. Maybe I think we kind of forgot also. I will be the first to admit that. But the last year when the FIFA E World Cup was going on, the players who went over, I think Julio Beast went over, and
was it Tabo?
Was it Xian? No, Tabo did he? I'm sure Tabo went, but I don't remember how he did. And Xian also went as well. And like those guys, they didn't qualify and make it to the next stages, but like it wasn't a case of them getting wrecked. Like they were competitive in their groups, right? So you can, just from that alone, you can see they can compete on the thing. So it's like we don't have to. Also, at the same time, I know we're saying it's unfair and we should be like, oh, waving the flag. But at the same time, we don't have to be like the guys who did shit did well either, because we have guys going and still actually doing decent. So you don't have to we can just be honest about shit, at least that's how we'll be on this podcast.
Yeah, well, that's what my feeling on it is. I think it's a little disingenuous to go like, oh wow, look, we competed against the best in the world and look how well we did. No, we got wrecked. That's not an honest thing to say, because like if you want to get better, you got to kind of acknowledge where you've fallen short. But as you say, it's not realistic to expect guys to just go over and destroy and do amazingly, but at least make a good showing of yourself, a good enough showing that it warrants that the tournament organizers look at it and go like, there's something there. We could get them back again, and I'm sure if we give them another chance, they'll do well. But you don't ever want like overseas people just looking at your country like a meme, that's happened before, and we don't want to hear that in South Africa. But I read Twitch chat. I shouldn't. I mean, it shortens your lifespan, lowers your IQ, all of that. But it's a pretty good barometer of what people think, man. And when we saw Bravado doing well, what people were thinking changed very quickly after those first few games, where they're like, "Oh, Africa, lol." We shouldn't be in that situation.
I guess so. But like, context is important. That's all.
I agree. I mean, I'm making sweeping broad strokes, but of course,
I don't think you like decide they're gonna go over and be like shit and get like 0-30.
No, of course, nobody's intention is to do that. Of course not. It's definitely not. And I guess the other thing is, you could prepare as well as you possibly can. If you just don't have the experience at that level, it's going to be difficult for you. But again, I'm just saying it's better for everyone if you do well. And it's not like,
You know what's an actual good example of this is that the Lead Pro team that went to WESG, the Dota team, right?
Mhm.
They obviously became a massive blow up in the South African Dota scene because Filthy Frank in his interview said, well, they didn't have time to scrim because they were all in other international teams and not in the same country, and they didn't actually have time to scrim. But they didn't. So let's say they didn't practice one match going into WESG. Them 100 times over would have been the best South African Dota team to send over. Like, there's nobody else remotely as good as those 5 guys that went to go play that tournament. So them being there and not, okay, they were close to qualifying. Okay, close is pushing it. They could have been close to qualifying, but they put in a good showing and they kept up with the level of the event, right? That's a good showing for South Africa.
absolutely, I agree.
Goliath Gaming going there, having scrimmed the million fucking hours and getting shit wrecked would not have been a good showing. So stop crying about this stuff. Like, it's about the right people going also. It's like not just about like it's actually clear cut things, but I think people get too caught up in this kind of shit. Like, sometimes a guy's gonna go is gonna get shit stomped, we understand. Sometimes guys gonna do well. We also understand why this guy's doing well. Like, those guys were overseas, that's why they could do well. So it's like it's I'm not gonna call it nuance in the situation. It's actual facts in the situation you just need to look at, because it's not a yeah.
Let's support
It's
our
not a
guys,
public-
but also let's be honest about how things are, rather than, being PC and giving out participation medals, because, fuck those things.
Exactly. It's like, what if somebody told me, good job for being the 4th best podcast on the Esports Central ZA podcast? I would shoot myself. I mean, at least I'm better than Glenn, right?
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
you're better than Glenn because you actually show up. That's the most important detail. It's a small detail. Oh, geez, was that a white supremacist symbol? I just realized. Wait, Overwatch League,
Oh, and then you were talking about a one black guy on our podcast, and you use that.
Oh,
symbol
my
as-
word. Geez, I'm digging myself in a really big hole here by mistake.
You might as well be a shareholder in Echo Esports.
In Echo Fox. Okay, well, with the magic of the internet and Sony Vegas, woo, back to normal local esports news. So let's talk about this female CSGO league that's been announced. I mean, there were the 2 Valkyrie challenge. Well, there was the Valkyrie challenge and then the 2 seasons of Valkyrie, which was the female CSGO tournaments. Now there's a new one.
And you kind of like need that, like, where are they now from the Oscars playing in the background. I don't know if that's harsh, but I can't remember how many teams were actually playing in Valkyrie. We've got 9 teams in this.
We had
new league.
14. We had 14 season 2 of Valkyrie. So,
You were a commentator on that, right, Prof?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I
And
know. And we've got 9 now.
who still exists.
It's a lot of the usual suspects. I guess it's. I mean, I haven't checked teams, so I might.
I'll pull it up on the screen for you guys.
Actually, specifically noted because that's why I was thinking about Bravado Academy. I saw that they were not playing in it, and I actually don't know if they still exist.
Yeah,
Well, there's a pink Bravado logo, yeah?
Yeah, there's a pink
that not
Bravado
the s-
logo. There we go. Bravado,
is that it?
Aperture, White Rabbit, Amaryllis, Electrix, Berserk, React,
Electrix
Ivy
is
and
new.
Cleo. Rage Quit.
Electric is new and Berserk is new. I mean, the players might be the same, but those teams sound new to me.
Energy there as well. So, there's a few names that we know, but I think the
Okay.
lineups have changed quite a bit, right?
The girls do tend to shuffle players, but I mean that's the same for basically any
Yeah,
scene
every
in
esport.
ESA. So, I think most of the usual suspects would probably be there though.
I guess that's good because as much as I dislike all female leagues because it's stupid.
You can say it.
It's stupid. If
You're allowed to
have
say
have,
it. You're a female.
No, like grow a pair of balls and play against the boys. It's the only way you're gonna get better.
Hey, Theon Greyjoy showed us that you don't need balls to be a man. Okay.
True. I stand corrected. No, I just mean like for me, it always comes down to like you need a bigger pool to play against, and if that is going to be it's males and females, then that's great. And then there's of course the argument, yes, but it's like a safe space for girls to get into gaming, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. And yeah, we've had this the first time I actually appeared on this podcast. I had this fight with myself. I
No,
don't know
like,
if
do I
anyone else
say
is
something,
talking-
don't I?
I was like, I do not like this.
Well-
But I guess great. There's more CS, more players, and as long as it's the same players coming back and playing competitively again, then I guess it can only be good because they're getting that experience, but then they need to actually buckle down and go play in the other leagues as well. Like, get out of the bullpen
Yeah,
and go
to
play.
to be fair to them, I think a few of these teams do actually compete in the VS Gaming divisions. I think they're like second division or something like that. So I think Energy and Bravado and the BZK team do. I think one of the React teams do as well. But
That's fantastic.
yeah, which is good. I
Keep
think
doing
that's super important for them to improve as players individually. Because of course, as you're saying, the level in other competitions that aren't all female competitions will be a little bit higher. So it'll stretch you as a player, which can only be a good thing. Something like this, though, I almost thought the female CS scene might have been completely dead after Valkyrie ended, because it didn't seem like Metal State were going to do another one. I didn't see any sort of inclination out of them that they would. And it's it's always interesting to ask, like, would the teams continue if there wasn't the opportunity? Like, would those players continue if they didn't have the opportunity to play in all female teams? And I guess based on the fact that there's 9 teams here instead of the 14 we saw in Valkyrie, probably for a lot of them that isn't the case, that they wanted to keep doing it because it's been quite a long break. But I mean, I'm obviously just speculating as well, because it could be that they've gone played in integrated teams with guys.
Playing competitively is difficult. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of your time. And if you have like I have a job, and it's difficult to keep up with it, and I get all of that. And obviously we're also such a small pool of players. Then to make it okay, now cut that even more, just the females, then yes, you're never going to have a crap ton of players. And I think what happens a lot, even maybe when you had the 14 teams, is literally every single girl that you know is in your team, because that happens. That is what a lot of girl teams do. But yeah, as like I said, if they stay in it and they're playing, then great. If they're playing in the other leagues, even more so. Fantastic. Keep on doing that. I don't know if with most of these, the goal is ultimately for them to graduate into mixed teams. I do that a lot. I should stop doing that. You don't normally see this, but that's me when I'm talking to myself.
The air quotes.
Yeah, there's air quotes everywhere.
Air quotes everywhere.
But then again, then you're sitting with the thing of, well, okay, if the thing is for them to start in an all girls team, get familiar with the competitive scene, and then end up going to a men's team or a mixed team or whatever, then what is the point, and how will these girls teams finally actually keep on existing?
I guess it remains to be seen.
I mean, I think it was Tekla that was saying, like, her original idea for the Valkyrie League was, it's a stepping stone. Like, we'll give you the stepping stone to start off with. It's sort of like, I think a better word than a stepping stone is probably like it's training wheels on a bicycle. It's like a training wheels on a bicycle. Like, here's the start. Do you enjoy it? Now continue, type thing. And
then 5 teams said, nah, we didn't.
I mean, it like a lot of the ladies there. I mean, I remember there was one lady that was like, she gave birth, and they were trying to like arrange, like, oh no, we'll bring the computer to the hospital and she'll play from the hospital bed. And it was like, that's mental. Like, guys,
dedication.
Like, guys wouldn't even go to that level.
Okay.
So,
like, channel the rage.
There are some ladies that are like really, really hardcore into CS, and it's great to see. I mean, look, it's not for everybody. It's easy to say, oh, we had 14 girls teams last year and we've only got 9 now. It's like, yeah, but go and look at how many guys teams that we have. There might be 100,000 guys playing, but we'll probably only have, say, 5,000 that are willing to try competitive. So, I mean, I don't think it's a knock on the girls. Certainly, I think it's disappointing to see less teams, but it's also like, that's just how things are gonna fluctuate. We could have 6 more teams join us in 6 months' time. So it's
as long as there's enough to actually have a league, and the people that are playing, at least there's like, I want to say at least 5 teams that are battling it out, and it's not just one team stomping everybody else and everybody else is like noobs.
I mean, that's unfortunately what's going to happen. The Bravado and Energy teams are, I think, so much better than the other girls teams, just purely based on experience. And obviously, they do have more skilled players as well at the moment. That it is going to be that until the rest of the scene catches up. But the other teams will eventually catch up. It's just, you need to give them a bit of time.
but it's still
Yeah.
enough.
Fair enough. I think that's we covered all sides, and then also just to react as well themselves. Good on you guys for actually creating something for the female CS scene, because nobody else was doing it. I mean, there's bigger tournament organizers out there. In fact, these aren't even a tournament organizer; they're a team themselves. So they probably looked at it and went, "Well, we've got these 2 female teams. Where do we get to play? Well, let's start our own thing." So I think we need more people doing that kind of thing, honestly. So well done to them. I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, for sure. And the tournament format is kind of different as well. You have like entry fees and stuff to contribute for Trial Pool. They said they're going to get sponsors to jump in as well. Hopefully, we see the money coming down from the sponsors to add. So it's a different tournament format as well, in the sense going to be at the Maverick Gaming Lounge.
I think that's the
Sandton.
final, is it? Or does the
is
whole
that-
thing happen?
it's going to
there?
be a league. The league playoffs. My bad.
Yeah, okay.
Still,
Well,
that's a LAN for it's an all girls LAN tournament. Think
Yeah,
about that
forget
for a
even all girls. It's just a LAN tournament. We don't have that many in SA. It's just
Yeah.
yeah,
good-
this
good
is a
initiative.
super cool thing. So really well done to them, and they've got somebody on board that can give them the facilities to actually have the LAN, which I think is pretty sweet. There hasn't been, I mean, Valkyrie neither season had a LAN final, so this is already something that.
So
that
it's
this has
only
actually
the
got over
original
it.
Valkyrie challenge that had it.
Yeah,
That's the show match.
the show match, yeah. So I think this is a fantastic thing, and I'm interested to see how it goes. The league actually starts according to the poster, on the 2nd of May, so that's the day this podcast comes out. So definitely look out for it, and I hope to
get
see
this
some of
guy.
those players on bigger stages in future, because that's the whole point of this thing, I would imagine, to develop them. So get developed. Meanwhile, did you have something you wanted to chat about in local esports there, Carmel?
I did indeed. So the thing that sort of sparked this discussion that I want to bring up is I had a conversation with Mr. Cypress, captain of XT Gaming, POS 5 player. He, in the Dota 2 team specifically, he says that he thinks there should be a change in the coaching rules in VS Gaming. And obviously I say VS Gaming, but if it happens in VS and they change, then obviously it could branch out to the rest of them. I haven't seen any coaching rules from Metal State or the like, but VS Gaming are the main Dota 2 guys, and they don't have any incorporation of coaching yet. So I was like, yeah, but how can you really have coaching in online games? Because there's no real way to monitor it. But actually in Dota, when you disconnect from a game, or you see, when you're playing a game, your enemy team, the casters, everybody can see the coach disconnecting. So how it works in professional Dota is at LAN events, coaches will be there, can draft for the teams, discuss. But the minute the draft's over, they get out of the booth and they go on their merry way. Obviously, there could be big advantages if a coach stays in the coach slot. That means they have full vision of the map, or at least real-time vision, so not full vision, and can help the team. But that can happen anyway. Or yeah, if you're in the slot, in the coaching slot. So the fact that you can see coaches disconnect is a way to kind of monitor it. Yeah, maybe you have to have teams to agree, or that kind of stuff.
That creates such drama, though.
I've
It could be.
seen like locals Overwatch teams. So in Overwatch you can have spectating, or obviously people can stream the game, but you will have limited like view unless you're spectating. And where a team told me that they think that the team was getting coached while they were playing one of their VS games, because it was odd stops in the game, like pauses being called. And then obviously like switches happening, and they were like, is this something that's actually just them doing it, or is it the coach telling them what to do? It's a bit of a weird situation. I feel like once you're actually playing, the coach needs to be like, okay, I'm going to check the VOD afterwards, and if you suck, I'm going to tell you.
I mean, Dota has delayed spectate features, so the coach can still watch the matches. But my whole thing is you need to be able to monitor that the coaches leave.
Problem is that just creates so much drama. It's because like, oh, the coach didn't leave. How do you know? And then it's just like a massive back and forth between players arguing. And that's just my issue. Is like, how do you stop that from going on? Because somebody's gonna have to monitor when like that kind of problem gets brought up. Because I guarantee you, it'll get brought up.
And there won't be an admin in the server watching what's going on either.
No.
So.
Isn't it the same, like you can take screenshots during the game and you have to post it to your like VS results afterwards?
Fine.
So, but won't you see the
remember
disconnect happening or not?
Remember how many games you'd have to monitor then? Because then you'd have to
No, but-
monitor
But
Premier
isn't it on
League,
the
First
players?
Division, Second Division, and like the open
Isn't that on the players themselves? Like we would used to like if something strange happens, then you basically screen cap everything
Yeah.
and submit it. But yeah, Moon Cow then has to basically go through everything.
So well, here's the flip of it, right? If you look at professional online gameplay, which would be tournament qualifiers and stuff, which teams would play from team houses and stuff, they would have their coaches there helping them during the process. And it's no, obviously, they could be on TeamSpeak with them and all that kind of stuff, but there's no way to monitor that either.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Well, look in CS, there's been the ability to have a coach on the server for quite some time, but as far as I know, with VS, you're not allowed to. Am I correct in that as well, Prof?
I don't think they monitor. The problem is like it's such a difficult situation with the VS servers as well because nobody really uses those servers. So how do you monitor now a third-party server that you don't have access to?
Yeah,
everybody just uses their own thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I'd say overall, like Carmel's points on coaching, like to me, I was an active player in 2015. In 2015, I wanted the ability to have a coach in the server, and it was something that you're not allowed to do. It's now 4 years later, and
unless you can monitor it properly, there's no reasonable way that you can do it.
See, the thing is, you can't monitor online coaching properly, right? That's given. But it could. I feel like you still need to think of a way to allow it to happen because I still think it is a beneficial thing. I think it's hard, but it's not really doable. But I do think a rule that needs to come into play and change is coaching for LAN tournaments. Like I think LANs have to allow
that. I'm all for because you can monitor that much more easily. But like online environment,
it's like having an
way
extra
too much
player.
he said, she said in that situation for my liking.
Yeah, and we've also seen with Valve when it came to CSGO, they clamped down on that whole thing where coaches were actually calling for teams, acting as the sixth player in a 5-man team basically. So you could have another aimer playing who's got better skill and doesn't have to have his mind mostly focused on thinking about what everybody else is doing.
That's what they said.
That's what they said.
Actually the case.
I mean, I think it was bullshit. Like honestly, to me, it lowers the quality of play in a lot of ways. But that's what they want. They're the overlords of the game, so that's how they want it to be. But they do still allow for the coaching thing. It's just how to pull it off. I think you're right, Prof. I don't think there is any way the VS Gaming could monitor it as it stands right now. But it is something I think that bears a little bit more thought from their side at some point in the future because it will allow, I'm talking not most teams, just the better teams to have that additional input will help them improve if we're talking about moving to the international stage.
Yeah.
But they should be doing that before actually playing.
Yeah. No, you're not. You're not wrong about that. It's just the international precedent is there. The better teams, that's how they operate. They have their coach on hand. In the timeouts, the coach is talking to them, telling them, "Hey guys, you're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. Let's tighten up." All the usual stuff.
Some of them do.
Some of them
just
do.
Sort of wander around.
Some of just like.
Yes, I mean, there's the professional backslapper and fist bumper, right? I mean, there's a few of those around in international esports, even in local esports. If I think back to a few lands, it's like there's this dude walking around, boop, and then the one player leaves him hanging, and his whole career hangs in the balance because he's just not getting that fist bump in return. It's terrible, man. Talking about terrible, I think let's end this off on a good note. Actually, I'm going to quickly bring up a beautiful tweet from Thorin. Actually, I'll share it with you guys in our document so you guys can have a look at it. I thought this is quite funny. We'll see how this actually goes because I haven't watched it, but it's tweet about Riot. Since we didn't get to talk about Riot, I think we can look at Thorin's tweet here. He says he just posted the Thorin's Thoughts video on how Riot treats people in the industry, and that doesn't seem so unusual. But the second comment is Riot fucked me out of a gig hosting the LPL playoffs, so I came forward with my story and also collected some of the greatest hits of them fucking other people in the industry. And let me just say, you may not like Thorin, but he usually brings the fire, and I'm actually I really want to go watch this after this is done because I just anticipate this is going to be good. And why I like bringing this up is because I like watching Riot get roasted, and I like Glenn getting super angry about it, and he's not here to defend himself. So
I feel like Glenn would be the most upset about all this shit, though. To be honest, So yeah, looking forward to what he has to say next week. But the Storen video is going to be a gem. If anybody watched his video on the Face It talent fiasco that happened like last year sometime,
How long
it's
is this
hilarious.
video that Thorin just posted?
43 minutes, my guy.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Quality
We need a
content.
TLDR.
That's what people say about this podcast. We're edging on an hour as well. So anyway, I like taking opportunities to wreck right. They wreck themselves all the time, which is beautiful. I don't know how they manage it, but they're very skilled at it, and we'll definitely dig in on them next week a little bit when we got our LOL guy back. Meanwhile, I think we'll call that a day or a night or whatever time of day it might be for you where you're watching the podcast. That has been the Esports Central podcast. I'm Extremes. You can see in the description there my name at Extremes on Twitter. Prof, where can people find you?
Find me at Prophecy Gaming, PROFECR.
Carmel?
At Kajik Day.
And live from my kitchen at Saint Gatalili.
Of course, if you're watching it, you're wondering why we're reading it, but this is also a podcast that has been around for almost a year in audio form. And of course, you can get that over on Spotify, Apple Music, Podbean, and all sorts of other places as well. And that's who we're actually reading it for. So Esports Central, you can find on Twitter at Esports Central, the website www.esportscentral.co.za, and also on Facebook. And there's all sorts of esports news related to South Africa, international results, opinions, things written by me, things written by Carmel. Prof never writes anymore. Shake my head at him.
It's been more than a year.
Oh,
I haven't written or made a video in quite a while for them.
yeah.
Someone's
Well,
going to be mad.
shaking your head. Shake your head for me. Come on, I want to see.
But
At yourself.
I am the most consistent podcaster, I will say.
Okay, we'll go with that. He's the most consistent podcaster and the most okayest Dotacaster in South Africa.
Oh, coined by Richard Beetle.
Yes, Beetle 001. So that is the Esports Central podcast, episode 40. We will be back next week with episode 41. Hope you enjoyed the video and hope you enjoyed the audio. Catch you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.